into Paris, and in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, some of the superb vehicles which will be racing in the Grand Prix Historique de Paris. This a weekend packed of nostalgia, because the circuit is also nostalgic. Montlhéry to the south of France, the bank track, the track that some of you may remember was the feature event of that wonderful film Un Homme et une Femme. Some glorious cars here from between the 1930s and 1970s, and undoubtedly the showpiece, the three Matras from the late 60s, early 70s. They're the earliest coupe, the Matra 630, the green, the colours of Henri Pescarolo's helmet, the four-time Le Mans winner, won, of course, the Le Mans 24-hour race with Graham Hill in that car, the number 15 car. And indeed, he was to race the machine, which is actually owned by Mike Knight of the French-based Winfield Racing School. Two of the other Matras being brought from the south of France, where they now reside in a museum. The Matra Aerospace Company were heavily into motor racing in the late 60s and early 70s. Le Grand Pesca, alongside him, Jacques Chirac's first assistant, Jacques Toubon, so the man who is assistant to the Paris Mayor, certainly enjoying his ride there on the circuit, and the glorious sound of the V12 Matra engine. Having said that, that particular car is fitted with a Gurney Westlake V8 Ford motor. Apparently the V12 engine was damaged. Well, an interview here with Mr. Toubon. He says really does enjoy these cars. Well, the famous shape of a Porsche 917. David Piper at the wheel. David Piper, who raced for much of the 60s, has been the leading light behind the Supersport series for cars of this particular era. And of course, we may well remember drivers like Pedro Rodriguez and Joe Siffert racing these 917s. The classic GT40. These cars will all be racing later. This particular GT40, a road-going version. I once drove a GT40 on the road. It was a tremendous experience, one that I shall never forget. Drove a D-Type on the same day, incidentally, thanks to Willie Green and the JCB collection for that. Well, there is the famous Montlhéry banking, and these various super sports cars just being demonstrated. Ted Rollison at the wheel of this particular 5-litre version. Some of the cars had 4.7-litre engines. There's one of the rather older vehicles, and there is a Cooper T53. For me, 1970 Formula 3 cars, largely lined up, some 69 cars. In those days, I was a team manager for one of these cars that's actually racing here today, a March 703, and being beaten, as it was in 1970, by a Lotus 59 in gold leaf colours. Also in this race, some of the old Formula France cars that raced in that era, and a good battle between a Techno and the Lotus 59, as driven to many race victories in the 1970 season by Australian David Walker, Dave Walker as we called him. 1-litre downdraft engines, we called them the Screamers. They revved to almost 11,000 revs. After every race they came out of the chassis. That Techno drives down the inside, and very close indeed, and indeed the Techno takes the lead off Gilles Boyer, number 21, driven by Michel Mayer, I should say. And these two breaking away from the rest of the field very quickly indeed. And a superb scrap at the front, so reminiscent of the kind of thing that went on back in the 1970s. Several Technos, Martinis, the odd Merlin. And further down the field, the old Martini MK4s. And the Lotus 59 is in trouble. And Michel Mayer in the Techno. Could well be an ex-Ronnie Peterson car or Rainer Wissel car. Ray Regazzoni used to drive a car like that, 1968. And number 46 spins off. Just locked it up under braking. That's Pierre Rignaud in a Martini MK4. And that Techno head and shoulders above the rest of the field as he dives back down the banking and receives the checkered flag. Next up, Group 6 sports cars. Very small grid for this one. Some Chevrons, Lola, old Elva BMW. There's a Chevron B8, the white coupe car. The leading car, Hans Markus Huber, Germany. The Chevron B21. A couple of the glorious Chevron B8s there, designed by Derek Bennett, who was so tragically killed in a hang gliding accident. The Elva BMW Mark 8 locking up under brakes. And there, a Lola T292, I should say. Shades of the old European 2-litre sports car championship. People like Twan Hesemans and Arturo Mazzario and Brian Redman all raced in this series. In fact, there's a big revival of these cars in Britain. Marcus Pye of the Autosport magazine, very much at the forefront of that particular revival. But it's an Elva Mark 8, Frank Nichols design, which we see going through the picture of the green car, but this is the leading car of Hans Markus Huber. And chased there by Richard Dodkins and his Chevron B8. Most of them came with BMW engines as Dodkins goes on the inside, and Huber obviously with a problem right at the finish. And a victory for Richard Dodkins from Britain. Second, the Swiss Hans Markus Huber. And third, Jan Proyart in the Lola T292. Now the Super Sport Series coming up. There's Henry Pescarolo, David Piper, Ford 3-litre with the White Knight at the wheel. Well, these cars will be racing in just a few moments. This is the presentation. There's that GT40, a much older Ferrari. It won't be competitive for those boys. A mouth-watering lineup of glorious sports cars of the 60s and 70s. There's Mike Knight. That's rare Ford machine, designed by Len Bailey. Mainly British drivers in this category, which has been put together by David Piper and Henri Pescarolo. They're in that Matras. Here's a list of the cars taking part. 3 different categories. Superb lineup of equipment. That's one of David Piper's Ferraris. It's Willie Tuckett, works in central London. Willie used to race a Chevron. And there's another glorious car. That was actually owned by the Roger Penske organisation and raced by Mark Donoghue in those very Sunoco colours. Absolutely glorious 512 Ferrari. Swiss owner these days.
J'ai eu une grande émotion de la retrouver exactement comme elle était quand
Henri Pescarolo being interviewed and saying it's a very big emotion for him,
réentendre le bruit du V12,
driving Matras at Montlhéry,
une grande émotion.
And I'm looking forward to a victory. Well, here's David Piper and put the series together. What did David have to say?
The Porsche is lovely. It's very nice. I've had the Porsche. I bought it new in 1969, and I've had it ever since. It's a good car. We've just put a new engine in it because, unfortunately, Brian Redmond was driving it in Japan and he broke the crankshaft. It wasn't his fault, but, you know, it's old age. So we've got a new engine in it now, and it's very good. It's the first time we've raced it.
So, David Piper, John Hunt, the Lola T70 on pole position. Pescarolo really getting to the task in the Matra on the front row of the grid. And look at that shunt. And, well, a lot of damage there. The number 14 car, and that is a great shame. Just very narrow at Montlhéry. And, well, you saw the end result of all that. Have another go at the start. And this time it's a clean one. And John Hunt into an immediate lead with his T70 Mark 3B. Denny Holm won a lot of races in a car like that. Matra in second place. Bill Shepherd's Cobra going through. John Hunt, who is married to the former Janet Bryce, widow of the Grand Prix driver Tony Bryce, of course killed in the aeroplane accident with Graham Hill at Elstree. In fact, Janet and Tom Price's widow have got an antique shop, I believe, in West London. Lindsay Owen-Jones there in his Lola, saw him out earlier, chasing David Piper. Henri Pescarolo in the Whitfield-owned Matra. The field coming through. That glorious Porsche 908 there, really being slid around. John Hunt used to hill climb, but now one of the quickest men in this Supersport series. Pescarolo, winner this year of the Daytona 24 Hours for Yost. Swoop down off the banking again. Le Grand Pesca really giving it a big go. I believe this is the only Matra which is in private ownership. Matra, of course, won Le Mans, breaking a long drought for France. I think it was something in the region of 30 years. So the Matra Ford looking extremely good. Some of the older cars going through the field. Number 10 is Bernd Becker with his, said it was a Porsche 908, but actually it's a Porsche 910, so I just look at it more closely. The car which followed the 908, Bernd Becker from Switzerland, he's had that car for a while. Ford F3L. Wasn't a particularly well-loved car in its time. Great Australian racing driver Frank Gardner had some fairly strong words to say about it. There's David Piper in his 917. Glorious Porsche flat 12 engine, of course. So coming up to the checkered flag. And Pescarolo now dropping back 1 lap to the unusual traffic light with red in the middle. Lotus 24 stranded in the middle. Well, remember in part 1, the Coopers contested the lead. And Coopers first and second again. Pre-war machine going through, and the Talbot Largo, Philippe Renault. Lindsay Jones, 38, having yet another run. John Muir driving the PRA, English Racing Automobiles. From the mid-50s. This car, 1959 vintage. And just going through the picture was a Connaught, which looked like one of the Grand Prix Streamliners to me. Hope we get another shot of that machine. As Chris Alford starting to fling the Lotus 24 around that car with a V8 Coventry Climax engine, 1.5 litres. Jim Clark raced a car like that. As we said earlier, this was the last of the space frame. Lotus's, the next model, the 25, was the innovative monocoque. PRA waves through John Harper. John chased by Lindsay Jones. And Lindsay Jones appearing to have problems there. And he pulls off, so John Harper's big rival from the earlier race, definitely out of the action. A yellow flag waved. Jerry Porter in second place, chased by the Ferrari and by Chris Alford. Here's the other Lotus 24 going down the inside of the Talbot Largo, which goes absolutely straight on. Philippe Renault. I remember that car's probably worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. So an excellent battle for second place. Also well up, see the back of the car, Leventon's Lotus 18. In fact, that was the Formula 1 model before the one you see in the picture now, the Lotus 24. John Harper, is he having problems? Car picks up again. And those two extraordinary Panhards, driven by Gorski and Lafol. Wonderful machines, urging it on. The Ferrari sweeps down off the banking again. Now the Ferrari in front of Jerry Porter. Porter outbrakes him. Two, of course, in completely different categories. That Cooper was really the first of the rear-engine Formula 1 cars of the late 50s. Remembering, of course, that Auto Union had engines in the rear pre-war. But then everybody went back to front engine and really throwing the car out and just managing to collect it. Jerry Porter. Jerry's a London car trader. On the banking, the Dino's engine really stretches its legs. And a terrific scrap between these two. Ferrari versus Cooper Climax. Most Climax keeping a watching brief. And the two Panhards, well, they've been lapped a couple of times. Straw in the exhaust pipe seems to come out of the front of the car. There's that Ferrari Dino. Undoubtedly that has the highest price tag of any car racing in this meeting. And yet again, John Harper seems to be having a problem with fuel starvation. Still flinging his Cooper around, slightly older Cooper model, that one. I think that's a 1957 version. Coopers were built in Weybridge in Surrey, close to the famous Brooklands banking. Here the cars on the Montlhéry banking. Just listen to that Ferrari, sounds absolutely gorgeous. So the checkered flag. And the Ferrari goes through, acknowledges the cheers of the crowd. Overall, the result, John Harper, Cooperlini second, Porter third, Alford fourth, Hall fifth, and John, you're doing a good job finishing sixth in the ERA and winning Class A.